Let's talk about learning to day trade for free. And I just want to give you a perspective to consider, and what you do with it obviously is totally up to you. And then also to offer up a disclosure up front. Yes, this is coming from a perspective of somebody that does offer classes and courses that you do need to pay for. But I'm not addressing this in the sense of, hey, you have to get my classes, you have to get my stuff. If there is somebody else out there that you've kind of been on the fence about, I don't know, do I want to make that investment? Do I not? Well, then hey, go with them. I want you to do and go with whoever you feel most comfortable with. So I am more so speaking on just the general topic of learning for free versus paying for a class. I mean, I would argue you're investing into a class because an investment, well, I'm kind of getting ahead of myself here, but let's just set up with really the question and what I want you to consider moving forward, because I do understand your logic as somebody that I'm assuming is a beginner, you're just getting started, and you're thinking, and I'm just going to use my numbers because, well, that'll just make all this easier. But from your perspective, you're a trader, and you could be looking at, going for the paid for route, and you're going to be seeing this. You're going to say, well, if I invest in your class, Clay, right here, I am all of a sudden in a hole by $24.97, because that's what your program costs. And but now all of a sudden, wow, I'm in $24.97. I mean, I could be using that money to start right here and potentially trade with, and at least I have myself a buffer of $24.97. I can lose some money, which is part of the learning process, no big deal. And I mean, Clay, geez, I can lose up to $24.97, but I would still be in the exact same spot as what I would start off with right now if I just invested in the class, which is just not true, which is just not actually how it works. Again, your thought process, I would argue, is very valid. It's rational. But when you start to stop and think about things, and those with experience know exactly what I'm talking about, the question comes down to this, is over here, if you do the free route, the main question here is, how deep is the free hole going to get? Because what is this hole actually giving you from over here? So if you invest, yeah, you have this hole right here that's gone down, but what is that hole giving you? Now, this of course assumes that it's a well-structured program, that's actually quality, and I've been around since 2013, offer a 30-day money-back guarantee. So I would like to think that I have confidence in my program and that my program works. But what is this actually giving you? Well, it's giving you this structure. It's giving you a process. Process in terms of, okay, first learn this, then learn that, then learn this. It's giving you actually good information. If you're not familiar, the internet is kind of filled with bad stuff. No, not everything's bad, but it is filled with bad stuff. So that's what that hole is giving you. It's giving you all these things that are going to be very, very valuable. Very, very valuable to do what? Well, to climb out of the hole. That's what that is all designed to do, is to get you back out of that hole as quickly as possible. And then here's the cool thing. After you get back up to that point out of the hole, what does this knowledge become? Well, it's become free. Free in what sense? Well, as far as your account looks like, you never paid for it in the first place because your account is right back to where it was. So yes, paid for information at the start does cost money, but if it's structured the right way, if it's a good quality program, then you're going to be able to get out of that hole, get back to where you were, which when you look back, like, oh, now I'm armed with knowledge that was technically free because it's paid for itself back. And now moving forward, I have the exact same knowledge that has not only helped me get out of the hole, that is now going to actually help me start to build some mountains, right? And that's what we want to do. We want to build mountains. And just as an example of that, up on the screen, we'll put an image. And this is just one of the testimonials I got. But looking down at the bottom part, and we'll highlight it, you can see that this person says, hey, I just paid off the class. So this is a student that took themselves into the hole, has now reached that point. They paid off the class. And from that point forward, it's all free. It's all knowledge. So that's the idea behind the paid for approach. But what about free? Well, free, like I said, has the question of, all right, well, how big is this hole going to be? And you're going to have a hole. I guarantee you're going to have a hole. Now, you might start off with a mountain, right? Fool's gold. See that all the time. What are you talking about, Clay? I made 2 trades and they're both green. I'm doing fantastic. And yeah, that's fine. But I'm telling you that there's going to be a hole. those mountains are going to get shaky if you start off. Now, some people just flat out start in a hole. But the idea here is this, is, okay, how big is this hole going to be? You know, how far down is it going to be? And you got to ask yourself, okay, well, how can you be so sure that there's going to be a hole? Well, let's look at it like this. And I've said this many times, and I'll say it again. There is a lot of bad information out there, but you know what? Let's just do this. Let's assume, and when you're a beginner and you don't know what you don't know, I don't know how this would be possible, but let's just assume that somehow you are actually able to pluck out all the good bits of information from the internet. I don't know how you're going to do that, but let's say you do. There's still a huge problem. There is no structure. There is no process. So that's great. You have all the good information, but in what order should you learn about them? So if you're trying to learn math, and okay, I got all the good bits, but you're learning about algebra before you learn about math, and then you go and learn about calculus before you learn about trigonometry, and then you learn about differential equations before you learn how to divide. Yeah, that's all good information, but if you're learning about it out of order, you're just going to be overwhelmed, you're going to get confused, and you're ultimately not going to actually learn what you want to learn. And the same is true for trading, because even if you have all the good information, if you're learning it out of order, then it's going to get very sketchy. And again, that's assuming you get all the good information, which is not going to be the case. And all it takes is one or two bad bits or misleading bits or kind of half-truth type things, and that's going to derail you. So there is going to be a hole, but how big is the hole going to be? And along with this is the hole actually works against you. Again, this hole is working for you because you have structure, you have process, so it's geared. But this hole is geared to get bigger and bigger and bigger. Why? Well, because frustration. You feel overwhelmed. I just tried this, now I'm going to try that. And you're just going a million different directions because you have no structure. So in all actuality, the hole wants to get bigger and bigger. And what is going to ultimately happen is that a lot of this is being caused from avoidable mistakes. Whereas people that invest in middle class, assuming it's quality, like I said, they're going to know what to avoid. Now, I'm not saying that if you invest in a mic training, for example, you'll never, ever, ever, ever lose money. That's not what I'm saying. But you are going to know, all right, I know I need to just flat out avoid that situation. But for somebody in the free world, they're not going to know about that situation that they need to avoid it. So, I mean, ask yourself, how much money have you lost during your journey that you're looking back, you're like, man, I could have totally avoided losing that amount of money. If I would have known what I was doing, I would have just avoided that and I would have never taken that loss in the first place. But when you're free, or when it's free and you don't know what you don't know, you're just not, part of not knowing is not realizing what situations to avoid because you're going to lose money or you have a high likelihood of losing money. So from that, kind of avoidance perspective all alone, there's going to be holes that form. And like I said, those holes have the capability to get bigger and bigger and bigger because you are just getting swallowed up by no structure, by no process. Potentially by bad information. And before you know it, this hole that you could have had right here, is all the way down here. And then the worst part here is you still don't have any real knowledge. You may think you have learned some things, and I'm sure you've learned some things, but I'm also pretty confident that you're going to have a bunch of bad habits. So now when it comes to getting all the way back up here to the starting point, when you're fighting against bad habits, when you're fighting against invalid, approaches to the market, is it possible? I mean, sure, anything's possible, but is it likely? No. And it makes sense why 95% of people fail. Once again, let me be very clear. I'm not saying that if you invest in my program, you're going to have guaranteed success because there are no guarantees. Trading is still very difficult. It's very hard. What I'm arguing and what I'm saying you should consider is the fact that there is value in structure and process. And I understand that going into the hole up front, that seems rough. And it is rough in some senses, but what are you getting for going into the hole? And you're getting everything that I've talked about. Whereas, sure, you may start level, but as you get in the hole, and I see it all the time, I started off great, made money, but now I've lost the majority of it, or I've lost it all, and now I feel like I can't do anything right. And they're starting to dig themselves a hole, and I get it. And I'm going to learn along the way. There's a lot you can learn from losses, which is true. But that assumes that you're learning the right lessons. I've lost count of how many times people are like, oh, I lost. I'm like, oh, what was the lesson learned? And what they tell me, I'm like, no, that's not the lesson that you should have learned from that loss. But again, in their defense, when you're new and a beginner and you don't know what you don't know, part of that includes you don't even know what lessons you're actually supposed to learn. Hence the whole arrow that can start to work against you and almost bore and keep on going and drag you down that much quicker. So like I said, I get it. Some people have already turned off this video. Some people are going to comment, Clay, you are literally just saying all this because you want me to buy your product. And I understand that point of view. I really do. So, but all I can really say is if you don't believe me, that's fine. But just when you go out there, watch that hole. And I want you to, match it up with, somebody that maybe you're considering, because you got to make sure that that hole doesn't all of a sudden spin out of control, because if it does, well, you're going to be in a lot more harm and probably even worse off with bad habits than where you could have if you just would have went in a good structured hole at the beginning. So just keep that in mind. Again, some of you, I realize there's no way to persuade you. I realize that anybody that's selling stuff is a con artist in your mind, and that anybody that is, selling some sort of service is some sort of sleazeball. And again, I understand that, because I'll be the first to admit there's a lot of shady stuff out there that goes on. And I also want to admit that I'm not saying, again, that if you invest in my program, then you're guaranteed to have success, because there are no guarantees like that. But from a probabilities, are you giving yourself the best possible spot to succeed? I would argue that investing, going into the hole for some good solid structure, process, good information is something that should definitely be highly considered. First off, thanks so much for watching the entire video. Real quick, before you go, I want to invite you to a live webinar, web class, training, workshop, online event, whatever you want to call it, but it will be me live revealing to you what I've discovered that has allowed me to transform myself from being an employee to being my own boss, including how I had only one losing day out of 73 days in total. I'm going to cover 3 keys that have helped me unlock profitable consistency within the markets. The first key is super weird, but in a productive type of way. The second key is super awesome because it quite literally is wired into our DNA as humans, making it very easy to use. But in a cruel way, this becomes a pitfall for many traders. I'll explain it all though, including how to avoid the pitfall that it creates for some. And yeah, the third key, when you hear it, sounds way too good to be true, but it's not, and I'll show you how it all works. Then at the end, I open it up for a question and answer session that is, again, totally live. Even if you can't make the live session, please still sign up, as it will be recorded, and you can go back and watch the replay that I will send you. Click the image on the screen or click the link down in the description box so you can get the date and time and claim your spot, which I should note is limited due to the fact that this truly is a live event. If you have any questions, let me know. If not, I'll be seeing you soon.